You're trying to remember a name. It's right there on the tip of your tongue. You can almost feel the shape of it. It starts with a J. Was it Jennifer? No. Jessica? No. You can see her face. You remember the conversation you had. You can even remember what she was wearing. But the name is gone, vanished into a fog. Then, hours later, while you're washing dishes, it pops into your head. Jasmine, of course. Where was that name hiding, and how did it suddenly reappear? This whole experience tells you something fundamental about memory. It's not like a computer file. You don't just save a piece of information, then open it clean and perfect whenever you want. Memory is a messy biological process. It's a creative act. Every time you remember something, you are, in a small way, rebuilding it from scratch. It's less like playing a video and more like a story the brain tells itself, based on scattered clues. To understand how this all works, we have to start at the beginning. Before something can be a memory, it has to be an experience. Everything you remember starts as a flood of sensory information. The light hitting your eyes, the sound waves vibrating in your ears, the pressure of a hand on your arm. All this information is converted into electrical signals zipping between brain cells, or neurons. Your brain is made of billions of these neurons, all chattering away to each other. They form a network of connections that is more complex than any system we've ever built. A memory isn't a single thing stored in a single place. A memory is a specific pattern of connections between neurons. Remembering is the act of reactivating that specific pattern. So the first step is turning an experience into a stable pattern of connections. This is called encoding. Think of it this way. You're at a birthday party, you're seeing flickering candles, hearing the happy birthday song, smelling the cake, feeling the warmth of the room. Each of these sensations activates a different part of your brain's cortex, the big, wrinkly, outer layer. The visual cortex is processing the sight of the candles. The auditory cortex is processing the song. The olfactory cortex is processing the smell. Right now, these are just fleeting sensations. They aren't a memory yet, they're just what's happening. For these separate pieces to be woven together into a single coherent memory of a birthday party, we need a master coordinator. And that coordinator is a small seahorse-shaped structure deep inside your brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus doesn't actually store the long-term memories itself. That's a common misconception. Instead, it acts like a librarian or an index. It knows where all the different pieces of the memory are stored out in the cortex. It knows that the visual part of the birthday memory is in one place, the sound part is in another, and the smell part is somewhere else entirely. The hippocampus holds the map that links all these pieces together. It creates the pattern. But it doesn't do this for everything. You don't remember every single second of your life. Your brain would be overwhelmed with useless information. So what makes the brain decide something is worth remembering? The first ingredient is attention. You have to be paying attention. If you're scrolling through your phone while someone is talking, you're probably not going to encode what they said very well. Your brain is a master at filtering. It prioritizes what you focus on. Attention is like the spotlight that tells the hippocampus, hey, this stuff right here, this is important. Let's start building a connection for this. Without that spotlight, the experience just washes over you and disappears. The second, and perhaps more powerful, ingredient is emotion. Right next to the hippocampus is another small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. The amygdala is the brain's emotion center. It processes things like fear, joy, and excitement. When an experience is emotionally charged, the amygdala gets highly activated. And because it's so close to the hippocampus, it essentially shouts at it, "This is a big deal. You need to save this. Make this memory strong." This is why you can remember your first kiss with crystal clarity, or why people who have been in a car accident can often recall tiny, specific details of the event. The emotion acts like a highlighter pen, marking the experience as high priority for memory encoding. The stress hormones released during an intense event further strengthen this process, telling the neurons to build a really robust connection for this memory pattern. So you've paid attention to something, maybe it was emotional, and your hippocampus has created an index linking all the different parts of the experience. A pattern has been formed, but this new pattern is weak. It's fragile, like a drawing in wet sand. If another wave of information comes along, it could be washed away completely. For the memory to last, it needs to be solidified. This process is called consolidation. This is where the memory goes from being a temporary, fragile thing to a stable, long-term memory. And a huge part of this process happens when you are not even awake. It happens when you sleep. While you sleep, your brain is anything but quiet. It's hard at work, sorting and filing the information from the day. During certain stages of sleep, your hippocampus replays the neural patterns of recent experiences. It's like a highlights reel. It activates the same patterns over and over again, but at a much faster speed. With each replay, the connections between the neurons and the cortex get a little bit stronger. The link between the sight of the birthday cake and the sound of the song gets more and more solid. The hippocampus is essentially teaching the cortex what the pattern is. It's telling the different parts of the cortex, you guys are all part of the same memory. You need to have a strong, direct connection to each other. This process physically changes your brain. On a microscopic level, the connection points between neurons called synapses are being modified. To make a connection stronger, a synapse might grow larger. The sending neuron might release more chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. The receiving neuron might sprout more receptors to catch those messengers. This principle is often summed up with the phrase, neurons that fire together, wire together. This physical change, this strengthened network of synapses, is the memory. It's called an engram, or a memory trace. Over time, with enough replays during sleep, the cortical neurons don't need the hippocampus's help anymore. They have formed their own strong, direct links. The memory is now stored independently in the cortex. The librarian has done its job. It showed all the different books where to go on the shelf, and now they can be found without looking at the central index. This is why someone with damage to their hippocampus might be unable to form new long-term memories, but they can still remember things from their distant past. Those old memories have already been consolidated and moved to the cortex. This process of moving the memory from being hippocampus dependent to cortex dependent can take days, weeks, or even years for very complex memories. So now we have a memory. It's encoded and consolidated. It's a stable pattern of connections etched into the circuits of your brain. But it's no good if you can't get it back out again. The final piece of the puzzle is retrieval. Remembering something isn't like pulling a book off a shelf. As we said before, it's an act of reconstruction. It all starts with a cue. A cue can be anything that is related to the memory you're trying to find. It could be a question someone asks you, like, what did you do for your birthday last year? It could be a smell, like the scent of cookies baking that reminds you of your grandmother's kitchen. It could be a placé walking into your old school might trigger a flood of memories. This cue activates a small part of the memory network. It's like striking a single key on a piano. The smell of cookies activates the neurons in your olfactory cortex that are part of the grandmother's kitchen memory engram. Because those neurons have strong connections to the other neurons in the network, their activation spreads. It wakes up the visual neurons that hold the image of the kitchen, the auditory neurons that hold the sound of her voice, and the emotional neurons that hold the feeling of being safe and loved. This process is called pattern completion. Your brain is brilliant at it. It only needs a fragment of the pattern and it can fill in the rest. This is how that name, Jasmine, eventually popped into your head. You had the cues only for her face, the conversation, but they weren't strong enough at the moment. Later, your brain, working in the background, stumbled upon a better cue or a stronger connection, and the whole pattern suddenly lit up. The fog cleared, but here is where things get really interesting and a little strange. The act of retrieving a memory is not a neutral process. Every time you bring a memory to mind, it becomes temporarily unstable again, just like when it was first formed. It's like you've taken the drawing out of its frame, and it's now susceptible to being smudged or altered. While it's in this active, pliable state, it can be changed. New information can be incorporated into it. Your current mood can color the emotional tone of the memory. Then, when you're done thinking about it, the memory has to be stored again. It has to be reconsolidated, but the memory you put back might not be exactly the same as the one you took out. This is why memories can change over time. You might remember an argument being much worse than it was, because every time you recalled it, you were angry, and that anger got woven into the fabric of the memory itself. It's also a primary reason why eyewitness testimony can be so unreliable. A simple leading question from a lawyer, how fast was the car going when it smashed into the other car, can actually alter the witness's memory of the event, making them remember the crash as more violent than it was. This also helps explain false memories. Our brains can sometimes take real pieces from different memories and stitch them together into a new memory of something that never actually happened. If your parents told you a story over and over again about how you got lost in a shopping mall as a child, you could eventually form a vivid, detailed, and completely false memory of that event, complete with sights, sounds, and feelings. Your brain took the suggestion and built a plausible story around it, then reconsolidated that story as a real memory. Memory isn't a quest for truth, it's a quest for a coherent narrative. Of course, not all memories are the same. We store and retrieve different types of information in different ways. The broadest distinction is between short-term memory and long-term memory. Short-term memory, often called working memory, is like your brain's mental scratch pad. It's what you use to hold a phone number in your head just long enough to dial it, or to remember the beginning of a sentence while you're listening to the end. It has a very limited capacity and lasts only for a few seconds or minutes unless you actively rehearse it. Long-term memory is the vast, more permanent storage, and even that is split into different kinds. The main division is between explicit memory and implicit memory. Explicit memory, also called declarative memory, is for all the things you can consciously recall and talk about. I declare that I know this. This is what most people think of when they think of memory. It includes your memory for facts, concepts, and events. Explicit memory itself can be broken down further. There's semantic memory, which is your storehouse of general knowledge about the world. Paris is the capital of France. A dog has 4 legs, the sky is blue. You probably don't remember where or when you learned these facts. You just know them. They are context-free. Then there's episodic memory. This is your personal autobiography. It's the memory of events or episodes from your life. Your 10th birthday party, what you had for breakfast this morning, the conversation you had with your friend yesterday. These memories are tied to a specific time and place. They come with a sense of personal experience. You are the star of these memories. Episodic memory is heavily dependent on the hippocampus to bind all the contextual details together. The other major category is implicit memory, or non-declarative memory. These are the memories you can't consciously access. They are expressed through performance rather than recollection. You don't declare them, you just do them. The most common type is procedural memory. This is your memory for skills and habits, like how to ride a bike, tie your shoes, or type on a keyboard. When you first learned to ride a bike, you had to consciously think about every little movement, push the pedal. Steer, keep your balance. But with practice, it became automatic. Now, you just get on the bike and go. You couldn't easily explain to someone exactly how you do it, but your body knows. This kind of memory doesn't rely so much on the hippocampus. Instead, it involves other brain regions like the cerebellum and the basal ganglia, which are associated with motor control. This is why someone with amnesia, who can't remember their own name, might still be a brilliant piano player. Their explicit memory is gone, but their implicit procedural memory is intact. Implicit memory also includes things like classical conditioning. The reason your mouth might water when you see a picture of a lemon and priming, where exposure to one thing influences your response to another. If you read a list of words including doctor, and are later asked to complete the word fragment, N-U-R-R-R-N, sir, you're more likely to say nurse than if you hadn't been primed with the related word. You aren't consciously aware of the connection, but your brain made it anyway. So we have this incredibly complex system for encoding, consolidating, and retrieving different kinds of memories. But what about the other side of the coin? What about forgetting? Forgetting feels like a failure, a bug in the system. But in many ways, it's a crucial feature. If you remembered every single trivial detail of your life, your mind would be a cluttered mess. You wouldn't be able to distinguish important information from noise. Forgetting is a form of spring cleaning. There are several reasons we forget. One is simple decay. The memory trace, the physical network of synapses, can weaken over time if it's not reactivated. It's the use it or lose it principle. Paths in a forest that aren't walked on eventually become overgrown. Synaptic connections that aren't used eventually lose their strength. Another major reason is interference. Sometimes other memories get in the way. If you get a new phone number, it can be hard to remember your old one. The new memory interferes with the old one. This is called retroactive interference. The opposite can also happen. Your well-practiced old password might keep popping into your head when you're trying to type your new one. That's proactive interference, where an old memory gets in the way of a new one. And sometimes we forget simply because we can't find the right cue. The memory is still there, stored in the network, but we can't access it. This is the tip of the tongue phenomenon. You know the information exists, but you can't find the right retrieval path to get to it. The librarian knows the book is in the library somewhere, but has lost the right index card to locate it. Then, later, a different cue comes along and the path becomes clear. Ultimately, this whole intricate dance of neurons, from encoding to forgetting, shapes who we are. Your memories are not just a record of your past, they are the foundation of your present and the guide for your future. Your knowledge of the world, your skills, your understanding of relationships, your very sense of self, all of this is built from the patterns of connections that have been forged through your experiences. When you remember your childhood, you are reactivating a network that gives you a sense of continuity of being the same person over time. When you learn a new skill, you are physically rewiring your brain to be more capable. When you meet a new person, you draw on a vast library of past social interactions to guide your behavior. Memory is not static. It is a living, breathing process happening inside you at every moment. It's imperfect, malleable, and deeply personal. It's the mechanism by which the past informs the present, a story your brain is constantly telling itself about where you've been, who you are, and where you might be going next. It's the beautiful, messy, and fundamentally human process of carrying your life with you. And it's all happening in the quiet, microscopic world of your own mind.